This video is sponsored by DistroKid. Check this out, I just discovered a plugin that solves two common mixing problems quickly, easily, and most importantly, automatically. Let me explain. There are two problems that I solve in almost every mix that I do as a professional mixing engineer with over 1 million streams on my work. The first is frequency masking. This is when multiple sounds with similar frequency content overlap and ultimately obscure each other, preventing them from being heard clearly. And the second is phase cancellation. This is when the waveforms of multiple sounds don't properly align, leading them to partially or completely canceling each other out and resulting in a loss of power and fullness. Not treating both of these problems will ultimately make your mix sound muddy and weak, with your individual instruments blurring together in an unclear mess that lacks clarity, power, and punch. And for a long time, I've solved these two issues separately and manually by stacking dynamic EQ and phase correction plugins, which I'd say is a pretty common strategy. And while these plugins are more than capable of getting the job done, they still require manual setup and adjustment to effectively treat these problems. This manual treatment can really slow down the mixing process, especially if you have to fix these problems across multiple sounds and with multiple processes, which isn't unusual in a dense mix. And I'll admit there are some automatic solutions available that can get you there faster, like Wave's Factory Track Spacer for example, but it only solves one problem, still requiring a second separate step to treat the other. But I recently discovered a plugin that not only identifies and fixes frequency masking between sounds automatically, but also detects and automatically fixes phase misalignment between them as well. And no, this isn't sponsored by the company that makes this plugin. I genuinely find this to be one of the most helpful mixing tools that I've started using recently. In fact, it's not even new, but it's streamlined my workflow and noticeably improved the sound quality of my mixes. Check out this before and after, for example, where I've used this plugin across multiple channels in the mix so you can hear exactly what I'm talking about, and be sure to disable stable volume on YouTube settings so you can better hear the difference. There's a lot more detail and fullness across the whole mix, with a clearer, more defined low end and a more upfront vocal sound thanks to this plugin. And what I use to achieve this is FUSER from Mastering the Mix. In today's video, I'm going to show you how it works, and more importantly, demonstrate how we can use it to solve frequency masking and phase cancellation quickly, easily, and automatically. Before we get started though, I'm going to leave links to FUSER down in the description below for you to check out, or even do a free trial to evaluate if it's the right plugin for you. Now, I'm all about efficiency, and I love it when I could solve multiple problems with one easy-to-use solution. But why does that only have to be limited to mixing plugins? Why not streamline the other areas of your career by using one solution to cover all of your bases? And that's why I rely on the sponsor of today's video, DistroKid. They give you access to what you need to distribute your music on streaming platforms like Spotify and Apple Music, and they pass on 100% of the earnings generated from your music directly to you. Unlike many other distributors that charge you per release or keep a percentage of your music earnings, DistroKid charges a low annual subscription fee for you to distribute unlimited music for the year, making them much more convenient and less expensive than the other guys. But DistroKid offers so much more than just getting your music out there easily. It has tons of creative tools built right in to help you create exciting marketing materials to support your release. This includes the meme video generator to create funny and relevant short form content, and the Spotify canvas generator so your music has some sleek visuals running in the background on the app, among others. There's a reason why over 2 million artists rely on DistroKid to distribute their music, including yours truly. If you're interested in signing up, you can save 7% off your first year by using my link down in the description below. Let's begin with two sounds that often give mixers the most trouble in a mix: the kick and the bass in the low end. But be sure to keep watching afterwards, as we're going to take a look at how to use FUSER to produce a cleaner, clearer, and more upfront vocal sound as well. Now, some of the most common advice you hear when it comes to managing the kick and bass relationship is to use sidechain compression, specifically using it to make the bass duck and create room every time the kick hits. But using FUSER instead provides a more targeted and maybe more importantly more transparent sounding solution. So let's check it out. First, we'll place an instance of FUSER on the sound that we want to be submissive or secondary, which is going to be the bass in this case. I'm specifically applying it to a bass master where 3 different bass tracks go. Next, we're going to route the sidechain input of FUSER to receive signal from the track that we want to be dominant, which is going to be the kick in this case. With this setup in place, when I play the track, FUSER is going to automatically identify and highlight frequency conflicts within the interface, like so. Now, this masking identification part isn't really revolutionary. After all, plugins like the FabFilter Pro Q4 or Neutron 5 can achieve roughly the same thing. But what is revolutionary is what happens after you've identified the masking. If you're like many out there, chances are you struggle with knowing exactly how much corrective treatment to apply. Apply too much and your bass sound can suddenly become weaker, thinner, and perhaps too secondary or lost. Apply too little on the other hand, and you may not be doing anything to solve the frequency masking taking place, making the entire corrective process pointless. So the big question is, how do you know how much of a reduction to make to clean up this masking? Well, with FUSER, you actually don't need to know because it'll make that decision for you, at least at first. By simply clicking the Resolve Conflicts button, FUSER will automatically initiate dynamic processing that adapts in real time and transparently resolves frequency masking between sounds without overdoing it. In other words, it'll determine where treatment should be applied exactly, how much treatment should be applied, and then only apply it when absolutely necessary. It's like a combination of spectral compression and dynamic EQ based entirely on your sidechain. Let's see how this corrective move is affecting the kick and bass relationship so far. You can see that FUSER is applying dynamic reductions across this particular area of the frequency spectrum. And this is already a significant improvement from where we started without us manipulating anything else just yet, as you can hear the kick is starting to cut through a lot more clearly. However, we could fine-tune this further by either adjusting the threshold or the node, allowing us to increase or even decrease and change the reaction overall. Or we can adjust the cue, the attack, the release to better sculpt the reaction and the overall area being affected. We can even double-click on the graph to create another node and do our own manual manipulations as well. Ultimately, this offers a lot more flexibility in treating frequency masking, as we can rely on what FUSER gives us or even make our own manual adjustments as we see fit. But that's the frequency masking side. What about using FUSER to fix phase misalignment or worse, phase cancellation? This is another common problem that pops up when mixing layered sounds, and it particularly plagues the low end, resulting in a weaker, thinner, and underwhelming kick and bass sound if you're not careful. In fact, you've probably experienced this at some point before. You play your kick in solo and it bangs, and then you play your bass in solo and that also hits clearly. But the moment you put those two sounds together, they sound dull, flat, and lifeless. Chances are you have a phase issue that needs to be fixed, and thankfully FUSER makes solving it a lot easier. To do that, we're going to pay attention to the phase area of the plugin down here in the bottom left corner. By clicking this Phase Analyze button, we can play our track and FUSER will automatically find the optimal phase rotation to ensure minimal phase cancellation between your sounds, reinforcing them and ensuring they're heard as powerfully and as clearly as they should be. Let's play this and see what it does. And just like that, we can see that FUSER has adjusted the phase rotation of our bass sound to be better aligned with the kick drum by -5 degrees. This is really as simple as it gets, and it beats the hell out of having to manually find the optimal phase alignment with other corrective plugins. But with our frequency masking and phase alignment now fixed, let's play the before and after to see how far the kick and bass relationship has come as a result of using FUSER. solving these two problems with FUSER, you can hear how the kick and bass relationship is a lot more harmonious. It went from being a slightly more hollow, empty sound where the two clashed quite a bit, to one where they're reinforcing each other and are a lot more powerful and ultimately working together. But the truth is, these issues aren't just present in the low end with sounds like the kick and the bass. In fact, they also often affect mid-range sounds such as the vocals and lead instruments, which causes them to compete for space and get in the way of each other. And most people will use a combination of strategic EQ cuts and sidechain compression to get a vocal to cut out on top. Or if they're really smart, they'll use a dynamic sidechain process focused on a specific frequency range with tools like Soothe 2 or Track Spacer. But those still require some manual adjustment to get right. The other problem is that some of these processes, especially more traditional moves like static EQ cuts or sidechain compression, can often be too heavy-handed, creating room as intended but negatively impacting the sound that it's being applied to. While we of course want more separation between our sounds, I'd argue that we don't want the treatment to be too destructive either. FUSER can quickly and easily create separation so that the vocal is clean, clear, and upfront, but adjusted transparently enough so that it isn't totally suffocating the secondary sound. Let me prove that with an example. I've already got an instance of FUSER set up on my main melody sound, which is a multi-layered sound spread across the mid-range that's clouding up the vocal. Because of that, I want this to be my secondary sound and have the primary sound being the vocal trigger this via the sidechain. I'm now going to play the track and see where FUSER identifies frequency masking taking place.
The thing make we do bada boom. Soon as I enter the room, look for the bride of the groom. I go sweep with the broom.
So we can see most of the masking is taking place between 100 and 200 is where it starts and goes as high as about 3K depending on the phrase. Just like before, we can get FUSER to automatically treat this by pressing the Resolve Conflicts button.
The thing make we do bada boom. Soon as I enter the room, look for the bride of the groom. I go sweep with the broom. Shorty no do drugs, but she do shrooms. She dey go vroom vroom, she dey zoom zoom, yeah. She no know say I be coming soon, yeah yeah. And I'm a biao, eh. Shorty got a piam piam, sing it my way. Ah, she dey no obey. She dey wake up in the morning only. In her face, oh ah baby come through. I just need a taste, oh mommy dey do. She can't be replaced, oh yeah 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 yeah.
It's a subtle change, but cleaning up this masking is allowing the vocal to cut through more clearly on top, but transparently enough so that it's not totally killing the melody either. And while phase issues primarily plague the low end, they could still sometimes get in the way of each other in the mid-range, so I'm going to enable the Phase Analyze button, play the track one more time, and see if FUSER can better align these two sounds to reinforce them.
The thing make we do bada boom. Soon as I enter the room, look for the bride of the groom. I go sweep with the broom. Shorty no do drugs, but she do shrooms. She dey go vroom vroom, she dey zoom zoom, yeah. She no know say I be coming soon, yeah yeah.
So FUSER's decided to adjust this to 175-degree rotation, ultimately better aligning the main melody and vocal waveforms. And now this is where we get to admire the difference, without me having done any adjusting at all, and simply relying on what FUSER has decided to do for me.
The thing make we do bada boom. Soon as I enter the room, look for the bride of the groom. I go sweep with the broom. Shorty no do drugs, but she do shrooms. She dey go vroom vroom, she dey zoom zoom, yeah. She no know say I be coming soon, yeah yeah. And I'm a biao, eh. Shorty got a piam piam, sing it my way. Ah, she dey no obey. She dey wake up in the morning only. In her face, oh ah baby come through. I just need a taste, oh mommy dey do. She can't be replaced, oh yeah 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 yeah.
As you can hear, it's very clean, distinct, and definitive, with more separation between the vocal and main melody, but without completely ruining the sound of the main melody either. Not only are the two no longer clashing with each other on the frequency spectrum, but their improved phase relationship is actually reinforcing both sounds and making sure they appear strong and full in the mix. Now just imagine repeating this across all the other sounds in your mix that might be clashing. In fact, think about the example that I played you at the beginning of this video, and I think that it's clear that this plugin is a no-brainer. And what's most interesting is that even though this is a corrective plugin, you do get an enhancement type of benefit from the result that it produces. But technically speaking, it doesn't enhance audio. Luckily for you, I know of two other plugins that are worth using for that instead. Perfect if you want to take the sounds that you just cleaned up and make them fuller, richer, and more exciting. I talk about what those plugins are exactly and how they work in these two videos that I'm going to leave on screen for you to watch next. If you got value out of the video, please give it a like and subscribe if you're new here to see more mixing content like this in the future. I appreciate y'all for watching. I'll see you again next time. Peace.
5,